the question answering over documents is one of the more popular use cases. And so I'm really excited to be doing this with 3 people who are experts in this. And so I'm going to let all 3 of them introduce themselves very briefly. And then what we'll do is go into longer 5 to 10 minute demos of each of their products. Or projects, and then we're going to go into question answers from you guys. And so I'll talk a bit more about that logistically after they do a quick round of introductions. So Andrew, do you want to start?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Andrew. You probably know me from Twitter and LinkedIn, I don't know. So I am an associate professor of chemical engineering, and I like to mess around with LLMs. And I first kind of got into this space after seeing, I think, the GPT index stuff. And then I started trying to use it for working with scientific papers, which is a big challenge here. Like ChatGPT was not trained on scientific papers. And so then I just started messing around with these things, and then that led to my tool, and that's kind of how I mess around right now, is trying to get it to basically remove the need to read research papers.
Yasser, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, hey everyone, my name is Yasser. I am a 4th year computer science student based in Toronto. I was first introduced to the LLM space and like question answering stuff with LangChain. So I joined the Discord, I think like maybe 3 or 4 months ago, like when it first came out, and I was like playing with it, just writing Python scripts, and from that I created Chatbase, which basically does that for you online on the website.
All right, and Caleb.
All right, everyone. I'm Caleb Peffer. I'm one of the co-founders of Mendible.ai. We build chat-based search for developer documentation. So with one line of code, you can embed a ChatGPT-like interface on your developer docs so developers can get answers to their questions. Me and my entire team have been entrepreneurs for, a long time, or I guess a long time relative to us, where we're still pretty young. We joke that we've never really had real jobs because out of school, we just started building things in the developer experience space. We built a coding course platform called SideGuide. It was built directly into VS Code, which we thought was pretty cool. We ended up building an interactive docs platform, which was called SideGuide as well. We just changed it a little bit. And when DaVinci 0.0.3 came out, we went from going, we know that generative documentation is going to be something eventually, to holy crap, this is happening right now. And so that sort of started our journey building Mendible.ai and bringing generative documentation to as many people as we can. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an expert on documentation retrieval. I feel like it's such a early field, but we've definitely learned some hacks and tricks around things. So I'm excited to talk to y'all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely true that it's an early field, and I think there are no experts, but I think we can have a pretty good conversation here with the 4 of us. So to get some logistics out of the way, this is being recorded. It will be available at this link afterwards, and we may or may not put it on YouTube or some other sites. If you have questions throughout the way that we'll do this is we'll do 5 to 10 minutes for each project, kind of like presenting, screen sharing, giving some background on both the technical side, but then also maybe a little bit on like the business side as well. And then after that, we'll go directly into question answers from the audience. So there is a question Q&A tab on the chat on the right. So there's the normal chat, and then there's a Q&A. If you have questions, please put them in there. Please upvote the questions that you want to be answered, and we'll just basically go through those at the end, hopefully getting some different perspectives on things. They can be technical, they can be related to the business, whatever people are most interested in. That's kind of what we'll take the time to answer. As Caleb said, it's super early in this space. We're all just trying to figure it out. There's a lot of hacks, and so really interested to hear what people are interested about, and get different perspectives on that. I think that's basically it. Yeah, it should be pretty fun, and we'll jump right into it with Andrew.
Okay, I should be sharing screen.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I happen to be one of the GPT-4 red teamers, so I've had access to GPT-4 for a while, and I was really interested in using it, connecting it to tools. And I don't know if you guys have read the GPT-4 system card, but I did a lot of the drug discovery or like chemical design work. And one of the things I needed it to do was to read through papers. And so actually, I was doing red teaming for GPT-4. LangChain kind of came out, and I hacked it together with GPT-4. And so I had a lot of fun messing around with LangChain. And it was kind of cool because I kind of got to see the future of what these things can do ahead of time. And one of the things I found is that to kind of get these language models to answer questions, there was this idea of putting documents into vectors and then basically asking a question and then turning that question into itself an embedding, and then use that to look up docs in that database of vectors. And that would give you like a set of passages. And then in the past, like I saw people messing around with this, then you would take those passages from the documents you embedded and then use that to answer a question. But what I found what was much better is to actually take those basically K documents. So you go and you get 5 relevant passages from a document or 5 documents, depending on how you view this. And then you give the LLM all of those documents and then have it answer the question. But then the problem was like the context window. So I can show you guys an example. So on the right side here, I have some things coming from documents, but I had to put them into an LLM itself to turn it into a smaller set. So basically I have, 3,000 character or 3,000 token document chunks. Then I summarize each of these into smaller chunks of 75 tokens, 75 words. And then all of these are given to answer a whole question. So you can see this from beginning to end. What are the governing equations for diffusion models? It looks at all of my documents by embedding this question, turning them into chunks, then summarizing the chunks, and then putting it all together into one big answer of what are the governing equations for diffusion models. And by doing this tracing of like going from documents to summaries, the summaries go into the final question, you can trace back the citations so that you can actually cite specific page numbers and documents. And this allows you to check if there's hallucinations. And so I don't really see hallucinations from this approach. Usually my prompts have like a bailout. Like my prompts will say, if you don't know, just say there's no relevant information. So here's an example here. This says there's no relevant information. And then sometimes it'll fail to answer a question. So that was kind of the idea behind this is, can we get like, the best of everything? Like we're using GPT-4, it's citing its sources, it's pulling from a diversity of sources. And I have this interface for paper QA that basically has all the documents you have accessible all into these chunks. Oh, and I should mention one more thing is that a lot of the work, and it disappeared, of course. A lot of the work in these kind of question answering things is getting nice split. So you'll see LangChain has a lot of really good ways to split text. I've noticed that if you do this extra step of putting the chunks through an LLM to summarize it, that removes all the needs for having clean chunking. And so actually, I don't even care about chunking correctly. So Paper QA has its own parser that just cuts at the character level, no thought or work on getting the chunks into nice orders. Doesn't seem to matter. And just, I know there's going to be a whole bunch of discussion, so I just want to show like a little demo, is that the latest thing, though, has been getting the papers, right? So the last thing I did was I took LangChain and made an agent that will basically have access to these different steps of getting context, doing keyword searches over papers, choosing which papers to read. And I put it together into an agent that basically has, choose papers, gather evidence, and the way it searches papers is from arXiv, bioRxiv, Static Scholar, and it looks at citations. So here's a question of like, why do birds flock? And it goes and it does a keyword search of papers. It gets a few papers out. And the agent is to use the Paper QA final answer, and it generates an answer. I'll just skip ahead here. And it turns out it can't answer the question because it doesn't have enough evidence. And that's this like hallucinations, is that if you stamp out all hallucinations, sometimes you can't answer a question. But by wrapping it into an agent, now we'll then decide, okay, it doesn't have enough information, so do different keyword searches for papers. I'll go read different papers and gather evidence with different questions. And what's nice about this agent is that I kind of modified the chain so that it has status at each observation, so that it can track its progress on getting to answering the question. And that's kind of how I got to where I am, and that's what I'm thinking about in this. Let's see, I tried to stop share. Right. Anyway, so I think this is like the getting these grounded responses is the future, but then you run into this problem of hallucination. And then how do you solve this? I think using agents to be able to go grab more resources and then reason over the passages better. I don't know, what's next, but these kind of ideas of putting together these large language models with tools to me is really the most exciting part. And I think reading papers and giving really good answers is great. And also, I should also mention, the cost of these things is growing, right? Like doing that agent-based model with GPT-4 running all over all of this is like a lot of money. But I think it's really cool that you can actually start paying $5 for an answer now and getting, an increase in quality. Okay, talk for too long. But anyway, that's just sort of what I'm thinking and then how I got to where I am.
That's awesome. And Andrew, I wanted to double click on the like chunking and summarization thing that you mentioned, because I know a lot of people are curious about that, and I didn't 100% understand it myself. So basically, when does the summarization happen? Does it happen during the ingest process? Does it happen during the query process?
Yeah, sorry, I just go too fast. So what we do is we do the summarization with the context of the question.
Okay.
So like in my example, why do birds flock? Then we go turn why do birds flock into a vector, go to the vector database, we find like 15 passages that could be relevant. Then for each passage, we say, we want to answer the question, why do birds flock? We have this chunk here. Is it relevant? If it's not relevant, say not relevant. If it is relevant, turn it into a 75-word summary of evidence. But this is a really key insight I had, is that you have to say, don't make a judgment. Because what we had before is that it would try to answer the question, and then like the first context would just set off the whole LLM being like, oh, the first context says yes. And then if the other 6 contexts said no, it would just be so sensitive. So it's a little bit of prompt engineering to make sure that each evidence chunk is like given impartial, make no judgment on answering the question, just provide evidence. And so I use the word evidence here just so it's like clear it's not answering the question.
Okay, and so that allows you to retrieve like more documents and then put kind of like the summaries into context. And when you're doing the summarization, are you doing like each chunk individually, basically, or are you doing like 2 chunks at a time and asking it to, or are you do and are those like, can those be like parallelized, or are those kind of like some refining technique for those?
Yeah, great. So that was another vision a lot of people, I think, focused on, is the refinement method. I found the refinement method to be really bad. And now I think, maybe that's just me, but I found it much better to basically try to put all the evidence equally weighted with no order. And so then go and go up. And yeah, I did write it to do it async at one point in my life. Actually, I wrote an interface paper QA in Gradio, in Streamlit, and Textual.io, and a Versal with a website because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. So I wrote it in all 4. I gotta say, Textual.io, love it. I loved async. It was really good, but it just couldn't quite fit into how I had the vision. So I don't do it asynchronously right now. It's a generator, so it generates evidence one piece at a time, and you can see the progress. But yeah, you can absolutely batch these, right? Because there's no dependence, no refinements, absolutely parallel these things.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's I think to me that's the big benefit of like this like map reduce type thing as opposed to refine, is just being able to batch all those calls and get them over with. Awesome. I think we'll have a lot more questions about that in the Q&A part, but now we'll go into the second one. So Yasser, do you want to take over?
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys see this?
Yes, and I will bring it front and center.
Awesome. So this is Chatbase. So Chatbase lets you do document Q&A, but on the website. So you basically can upload your document, and then it will create a chatbot for you that you can ask questions about the document, and it will give you sources. So it's doing something very similar to what Paper QA is doing. So I'm just gonna demo like how to like create a chatbot. So here you can choose like different data sources. I'm gonna choose file. You can choose like one or like multiple files. So this is a document that explains like what Chatbase is. So I'm gonna say create chatbot, and what it did, it chunked the document into like I think 100-word chunks, and it used the OpenAI embedding model to embed them and then store them in a vector database. And then now when I ask a question, so let's say like, what is Chatbase? So the answer is within the document. So what Chatbase is doing right now is it's gonna embed this and then search for relevant passages from the document within the vector database, and then use those passages to answer the question. So if I ask this, it's giving me an answer from the document, and like you can find this answer somewhere here, somewhere in the sources. Maybe like maybe it like rewrote it like differently, but it came up with this answer from these sources. And then it also like it can maintain context, so you can say like explain in simpler terms. So it knows that you're talking about this, so it's not gonna talk about something else because it's using context to. It's like using all of the context of the previous messages in the chat.
So yeah, how does that work? And like, have you like what pain points have you run into there? Has there been any interesting kind of like experimentations or just observations that you've seen where this works well or doesn't work well or something like that?
Yeah, that is a really good question because one problem is when you ask like explain in simpler terms. So Chatbase, what it's doing is it's also embedding this and it's looking in the document database, in the vector database, for passages that are similar to this. But the thing is, like, this doesn't mention anything about Chatbase, or it's not a question about Chatbase. It's a question about like this, right? So it's going to come up with sources that are not relevant to the question, and this is a problem that I'm trying to fix. But like GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 are smart enough to just like ignore all the sources here, and they know like I wanna like explain this in simpler terms, so it's gonna do that. It's gonna just ignore all the sources. But in an ideal world, I would know like this, like I don't need to search when I'm doing this. I'm just gonna like explain this. So in an ideal world, I wouldn't need to search, and my like Chatbase would know that I'm just gonna answer the question without looking in the vector database. For the context stuff, for maintaining context, one problem is the context length. So what I'm doing now is I'm sending like the last 10 messages of the chat to GPT-4 or GPT 3.5, and I'm cutting it off after like 10 messages. So if you ask a question about like a message you sent like half an hour ago, where it's been more than 10 messages, the chatbot will not be able to explain, to like respond to that, or it's going to ask you like, please explain more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think so. So I think like one. I've run into this problem a few times as well. And so like the naive thing that I tried to do was just like embed the whole conversation and pass that as like the vector embed. Like, so there's, I think the problem's mostly around like what documents you get back during like the retrieval step, because hopefully the language model should be smart enough to realize, but like you want to give it kind of like the best stuff. So yeah, like, like I think the naive thing to do is just like embed the whole conversation. But then if you're like changing topics, you get like bad things, and so there's some issues there. I've seen, so there's one thing in LangChain that helps with this, and then there's one other thing that I've heard of outside, just for context for people that I haven't tried but that I've heard works well. The thing that we do in LangChain is basically, and this will make it a little bit more complex, so you'll lose some like latency and stuff. But like based on the conversation, you can first do a pass to like generate a standalone question. So like based on this, if you had like, what is Chatbase? Chatbase is an AI bot builder. Explain in simpler terms. The standalone question might be like, explain in simple terms, what is Chatbase? And then you kind of like embed that, retrieve documents, and then use that for the answer. The other thing that I've seen or heard could work well is basically do some classification on the previous chat messages. And so then basically you try to see like, are the first like, or is it like what chat messages are relevant for the question? And so then if you're changing topics, ideally it's like, no, this isn't relevant, don't include this. And so then you don't include it. But then if there are previous ones that are relevant, you include all those, embed those, retrieve it, and then fetch it. I haven't actually experimented with that one, so I'd be curious if other people have. But yeah, and I don't know actually, yeah, Caleb and Andrew, I don't know if you guys have run into this as well, or if I'm sure there's like a million, as Caleb said, this is all kind of like hacks and heuristics. So yeah, I'm curious if you guys have any kind of like, yeah, thoughts on that or alternative methods or anything.
Well, this is a great.
So,
I'm already excited. I have so many questions to ask everyone here, but Andrew, I think you cut in. You might have had something directly related to that.
yeah, I just want to mention, like, pulling the wrong context is the Achilles heel in all of these things. Like, and so I think I like your suggestion, Harrison, of trying to distill it to one just single question. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. The distraction are what kill all these document question answer methods. So, and when I do this, that's why I kind of made that demo I was showing of like having an agent, is that you want to build your corpus really selectively. Like one of the first things people tried with paper QA is to put in like 1,000 papers and then just have, all of human knowledge, but then it just kept pulling in like the wrong context. I think there's some cool ideas in Llama Index, like using a tree search for that. But yeah, I think what you just suggested is a really interesting idea of like having like a step where you try to distill the question so that you don't have any kind of things that can get you distracted in there.
100%, 100%. One of the things that we first expected was that the more you gave the model, the better it would perform no matter what. And very quickly we found that that was not the case. You really do want to give it relevant information and prevent it from getting sort of, I guess, poisoned with irrelevant information, because it just makes it more likely to get off topic and distracted and hallucinate.
Yeah.
So okay, so this I was gonna ask this at the end as because this is one of the big things I've been thinking about, but like retrieval methods. Are you, and we can just do a quick like yes or no now, and we can discuss this more at the end, but are you guys doing anything more complex than semantic search? Any type of like hybrid search, any type of tree-based things, or is it still just semantic search? Yeah, with embeddings at the moment.
Yeah, I'm doing top K semantic search.
We started with.
I'm using.
Oh, go for it, Andrew.
Sorry. We use max marginal relevance. And then, like I said, we pull up more than we need. And then this summarization tool, we usually down filter since we can eliminate things. But I tried trees. I'm trying right now actually having it read the paper title and summary as well. So still do semantic search. And then you take a title of paper so that it can eliminate anything because it realizes it's from like an irrelevant source, which may not be visible from the chunk. But you're right, that's an important question.
Really, really important question. We started out with top K semantic search. Very quickly found that while it's really good as a baseline, it's not quite what we needed. So we ended up moving towards hybrid search and some of our own filtering on top of it. I'm really curious about tree-based search approaches and sort of LLM-based search approaches. So for everyone in the audience, vector search is basically just using OpenAI embeddings and then using similarity to find the ones that are most similar. But if I'm understanding correctly, Andrew, tree-based search or LLM search are more like you use an LLM and you go through each document, and that allows you to, like using the GPT-4 prompts, find the correct documents. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So basically, the idea is to organize, like maybe at the document level. So now you have a document which is chunked, and then that document has a 1-paragraph summary. And then so when you go to do your search, you search over what documents do I want. And then so you can use that like Jekyll and Hyde method. Like I have this question, which documents might be good? Then you have the document and you then have the name of the document. Then you go find which documents could be relevant. And then once you find, okay, I want these 5 documents, then I will descend and look through them for chunks. Me, like I'm usually interested in scientific papers. So I've been using the citation, and GPT-4 3.5 like it knows enough about papers to know like what the journal is, what the title is, if it's the right thing. So I'm kind of working in that level, but you can absolutely do something very sophisticated with a tree.
Right. So, kind of what I wanted to bring up about this is sort of contrast different objectives that you have with your model and how you can choose different question answering strategies to achieve your specific goal. So for instance, for us, we are really interested in those sort of, either map reducing, like I think you're doing, Andrew, or, doing a tree search, et cetera, with LLMs. but it's really important for us to keep our costs down because we're being used. As we start to scale, it just starts to get caught. It starts to cost more and more and more. So we have focused on, as the most affordable approaches, and vector search and keyword search mixed together is pretty affordable because you don't have to make a bunch of LLM calls every single time you make your search. You just have to embed and then go look up at a database. However,
so when you said hybrid search before, so you were referring to basically vector search and keyword search. And so could you, how exactly, like what exactly does that mean? How are you doing that, like under the hood? Actually, wait, before we go that, maybe let's finish up on Chatbase, and then we can move on to Mendible. Sorry, I think this is a really interesting thing that there's a lot of stuff to discuss. But Yasser, is there anything else that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is a rabbit hole, so like I can go on, but I think like this is basically it. And then you can like embed the chatbot on your website like this. So you can like ask it questions. You can like, if you go to the settings, actually, I want to show this. So you can edit the base prompt. So this is currently like my default base prompt that I'm using. I'm saying like, I want you to act as a document that I'm having a conversation with. And I'm saying that instead of saying, this is a document and I want you to help me like understand it, because when I use the second one, like when I use this is a document and I want you to help me understand it, when I ask it questions, sometimes it says like, the text says this. So like when I ask it, what is Chatbase? It's gonna say like, the text says Chatbase is this. And I don't think this is like a good experience. I think I want it to be, I want to have a chat with the document, not about the document, if that makes sense. So I've been like experimenting a lot with the system messages here. And I also added an option for the users to like edit this. So you can like give it a name, you can give it like a personality, you can like just tell it to like behave in any way you want. And you can change the model too. And you can also like change the chat interface. But yeah, this is like basically it.
One question I have about that is, do you see users kind of changing the prompt often? And like, if so, like what are they giving it like personality? Is that the main kind of like change they're making? Like, how are they using that?
All the time. Like most of like my power users, or the people who use it the most, they have like a name, they have a personality. They say like every second message or like every third message, I want you to make a joke or something, or I want you to be polite. And they give it like emojis too, like use emojis whenever you're answering a question. And this gives you like, you're basically creating like a persona for your company, if that makes sense, because it's a chatbot that has a name, it has a personality, and it knows everything about your company and can answer any question. And it doesn't have to be a company, it can be like a blog or a person even. And yeah, this like customizing this helps too, because you can change this message to be like anything you want. And like when you send this to GPT-3, like when you send the conversation, it's gonna see like how it behaved in previous messages, and it will try to mimic that in the future messages. So like if you make it behave a certain way in like these initial messages, the next messages are more likely to follow the same format, if that makes sense. But yeah, and then there's also like an API if you wanna like create a chatbot on Chatbase, and if you wanna chat with it, you can do that using the API. So you can build like a Chatbase for you. The only difference is that it's gonna be limited to the amount of chatbots that you can build, like based on your plan. But like these are all the APIs that I'm using for Chatbase. I made them like available for everyone. I know there's developers here, so they might be interested in this.
Awesome.
Any questions? Or
the last question I have, and I think this is maybe what type of documents do you support? And like, yeah, how are there, how have you found that? Like, are there ones that you support better? Are there ones that you're working on adding? Like, there's a long tail in terms of different types of documents, and yeah, I'm curious, like, yeah, how you think about that.
Yeah, so currently, like when you click on build your chatbot, it gives you like this. So data sources can either be a file, text, or a website. So files are like PDFs, text files, Word documents, and like, yeah, that's it, I think.
Okay.
And then text, you can like paste your text here. And website is you give it like a website, and then it crawls it. So you can give it like chatbase.co. It's gonna like go through every page on chatbase.co. But the website has to be small. I'm trying to like increase this limit.
Awesome.
And yeah, but I'm trying to add like more file types. Like I've heard a lot that people want Notion to be integrated in this. So I'm trying to find like a way to add this that is easy. So currently, I think we can do it by like downloading the Notion page and all the subpages and then uploading this. But I'm trying to find a way where you can like log in to your Notion through Chatbase and then have access to all your documents there, and then like choose which documents you want to add to your chatbot this way. And some people asked for like emails, some people asked for like Slack conversations and stuff like that. So, but for the documents that work best, I think I don't think there's a difference, because what I am doing, or what Chatbase is doing, is that it takes the text, it parses the text from whichever like file type it is, and then it removes all the formatting, it removes all like the new lines and stuff like that. And this, I think, is what OpenAI recommends, is that like you remove most formatting and you just have like spaces between words and basic punctuation. And that's what Chatbase does, regardless of what type of document you're using.
Super interesting. I think you're getting a few questions in the chat. Maybe we can answer those later, but for now, I'm going to switch it over to Caleb, and we can go to Mendible, and then we can do a round, a panel of some of the more popular questions in the chat at the end. So reminder to go and upload the questions that you want to get answered.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get a little feature of the LangChain documentation. Beautiful documentation, by the way. So like I was saying before, we are ChatGPT for developer docs. So if I hit Command K here, many of you may have used this if you're fans of LangChain. You have Mendible. So I think like the first, I'm thinking about different things I can show that will be relevant to everyone here. The first one I want to show is sort of how we're dealing with hallucinations, or our strategy. And to get at the core of the problem, and Andrew was talking about this, the more you try and prevent hallucinations, the more matter of fact the model is going to be. So it's going to, well, like you asked it, try and state facts. However, if you want to get it to start generating code, which in our case is really important because that's one of our most valuable use cases, it can actually get in the way of doing that. So what we've done is taken the approach of, if I ask a question like hello, which really has nothing to do with anything in the LangChain documentation, but allows me to talk to the bot. What's going to happen is that it's still going to answer, even though there's no documents that have been retrieved. However, it's going to disclaim that to you as the user. So you know that this isn't based on anything in the documentation. You're just having a chat with this LLM. However, let's say I wanted to, and this is one of my favorite use cases. I have a prompt and I just want to turn that into an LLM chain without having to actually write all the boilerplate. I can just go in there and say, I have this prompt with this input. Can you create an LLM chain for me? And here we go. It creates it, and I can just copy paste that and run in my code. I also have access to the sources if I'd like to verify that this is actually, how to do it. I think also in this case, it cut out a little bit. It didn't show the call. But this is how I create the chain, and then I can use it later. You'll also notice here we have normal search as well, which kind of goes to Harrison's question of, how we're combining vector search and keyword search. We found very quickly that vector search does pretty well. However, it tends to pull a lot of documents in, and then you need to set the threshold correctly. So vector search finds documents by taking one embedding and then comparing it to all the embeddings of the documents in your database and figuring out how similar they are. So you can say like 0.78 threshold, and anything that's got a similarity of 0.7 or higher is pulled in versus pulled out.
And so is that how you're doing the limited? It looks like, so when you did the first one and you're like, there's no relevant documents. So basically you're doing some semantic search with some filtering on the results based on some score.
Yes, correct. Well, that's part of it, right?
Okay.
So that sort of filters out a lot of the results. However, getting that threshold right, especially when you're ingesting a lot of different documents from a lot of different places in a lot of different formats, can be quite difficult. So we actually, on top of that, add another layer of keyword search. This allows us to selectively remove or filter certain documents out. It also allows us sometimes to find documents that the semantic search doesn't do.
So yeah, could you like dive into that a little bit more? So you do some, so you do some like and if you don't want to give away the secrets of your company because it's a legitimate company, that's fine as well. But I'm just trying to, so you do some semantic search, you get back some documents, and then you do some keyword search on top of the retrieved documents and on top of all the other documents, or do you just do them separately and then combine them?
Yeah, what I'd say is this: let's, the general takeaway is that you can combine these both for better results. What I would say is actually the hardest piece of all of this is putting together an evaluation set. So if you're working on something like this, I would definitely recommend starting out with heuristics, like just literally doing manual testing, like Andrew said, like dig in and then find cases that work and don't work. But as soon as you can, put together a set of questions that allows you to automatically evaluate how well it's working. Because
so what do those questions look like? Because I think like a lot of the difficulty is that the answers are like what should the answers even be? Like if it says like one word wrong, is that wrong? So like, yeah, are you constructing examples that you can do exact matches on, or are you doing some, how, and maybe this is a good pivot to just the general roundtable, unless there's more features of Mendible that you wanted to show off.
Sure. I mean, what I would like to say is that if you're interested in embedding a chat bot in your developer documentation, check out our website. We make it really easy to do this. It's one line of code in React. We take care of all the scraping and document ingestion for you, sort of like how Chatbase does. We also have analytics so that you can see the messages that you're getting. And I would recommend just taking a look at the website. We get kind of moving on to what you were saying, Harrison.
I want to see those analytics, by the way. I haven't seen them. I haven't seen them for the LangChain docs, so I want to see those.
It'll be coming very soon. In fact, that's actually what I'm working on right now. So what was the question that you had right before that?
Evaluation, and I think this is a good chance to open it up to everyone as well. But yeah, how do you guys think about evaluation for these things? And maybe start with we can maybe do a reverse order: Caleb, Yasser, and then Andrew.
So yeah, once again, like I was saying, I think that evaluation is one of the trickiest parts to get right. I also don't necessarily think it's something that you need to do immediately. Like it's much better. You can get a lot done just with heuristic evaluation, just trying it out and figuring it out. But then you have the problem of, okay, one, you need to show to potential customers how well it's performing. And two, if you want to, let's say, try out a different evaluation method, or try out a different information retrieval method, you need some way of actually evaluating whether or not that's going to be better. It's like, how do you fly a plane if you don't have instrumentation? You don't know whether or not you're getting better or worse. So there's some really key problems with that. Like Harrison, you were saying, how do you evaluate this model, right? It's coming up with a creative, undeterministic or non-deterministic answer. Like you can't just say, yes, this is good, and yes, this is bad. So I've seen a couple approaches that work pretty decently. First of all, I would break your retrieval pipeline into its own evaluation step. So, you can you can evaluate how well you're retrieving relevant documents on its own without even bringing generation into account.
And how do you do that?
I mean, there's quite a bit of literature on this. I would just recommend going and looking at papers on how how Squad does this, or frankly, just go to ChatGPT and just be like, hey, how should I evaluate my information retrieval pipeline? And it will give you a ton of information on how to go about this. Once you have that down, there's the next step, which is, okay, now how do I evaluate the generation piece? And I think, I don't have a great answer on how to do this perfectly, but I know that what OpenAI does, and what we've been doing, is you create a classification prompt that basically goes between a golden answer, which is like what the answer should be according to you, and then the answer it generates, and you have that prompt say, yes, this is a good answer, or no, this is a good answer, or score it, or what have you. It kind of turns out these models are pretty good at evaluating themselves, even though sometimes they're not good at generating the answers in the first place. So those are a few approaches, but I'd be really excited to hear from Andrew and Yasser if they've had any strategies in this space, or if anyone in the audience, frankly, because I find that this is one of the most difficult and most, there's a lot of work to be done here. And if anyone has any ideas, please reach out to me and let me know, because we'd love to chat.
Yeah, Yasser, what have you done for this?
So for retrieval, I think doing the hybrid approach would make sense. I haven't experimented with it, but for now, I'm just doing it manually. I'm just checking when I ask this question, are the documents or are the passages that are coming back, do they make sense? Do they answer the question? And I think top K similarity search is good enough for most questions. The only problem is, as I said, when you're asking question about a different topic in the conversation, or when you ask a question, it is vague. It doesn't mention a keyword in the document. For example, explain in simpler terms. So this is the problem. And I think what Harrison said about going through the conversation and trying to create a new question, given all of the conversation, I think would be the best approach for that. But for the generation part, as I said, Chatbase, it gives you access to the base prompt, or the system message, and that allows the user of the chatbot to they have the burden of experimentation. I have a good default prompt, but if they want to change it, or add stuff to it, or remove stuff to it, I don't have a framework to evaluate the answers after they change it. So right now, I think manually is the best way to do it.
Makes sense. And Andrew, what about you? And for agents as well, now you've got these more complex things. So how do you think about evaluating those?
Yeah, I think, hearing Yasser, Caleb, I think it's clear that we have different goals. So they're trying to build a product, and you got to balance cost and user experience. I want to build the most fucking insane Q&A thing that costs a lot of money and has a ton of options. So we try max marginal relevance, we have LLMs check all the context, and I have a set of questions that I want to try. So here's how I evaluate. I have an answer, and I get the answer from my tool, and then I have GPT-4 tell me if the answer is correct or not. I mean, that's how I solve all my problems in life right now, is more API tokens. So that's how we work on this.
That's a great answer. By the way, I know that I said that thing, keeping costs down, which is definitely a concern that we have that you might not. At the same time, though, I'm listening to everything you're saying, and I'm going, wow, these are some good ideas. So,
yeah, I think the reason this is so exciting to me is, I think one, evaluation is really hard, and so I think it's great to get all your guys' take on it, because I honestly, I think there's and I think it's I think it's hard, and I think the thing that people do right now is they just look at things by eye, and I don't think that's terrible. I think that's a great easy first pass to get started, and I think that's completely reasonable. But I think it's also really interesting to see what people are experimenting with. Same with retrieval. Semantic search is great for a majority of the use cases. That's what people are using. That's completely fine. But in LangChain, one of the refactors we did last week was to make it just now so you can use a generic retriever object. And so selfishly, I'm really excited to hear what you guys are talking about, because I'm hoping to either add some stuff like that in, or hopefully getting some, the retriever interface is so simple. I'm hoping it's literally one method. So I'm hoping that there'll be some like more interesting retrieval methods to get in, and then there's a question of how to evaluate. So I'm really interested in all this. But I've asked enough questions, so I'm going to go to the chat and ask some from there. The first one's basically on like using like local embeddings and LLMs, basically to not depend on API providers, so that one can do question answering on private documents. Have you guys experimented with that at all? So not using like OpenAI and basically using Hugging Face or stuff locally. And actually turning this also into a product question for the products out there, have you heard a demand for kind of like people not wanting to send their data to OpenAI or other providers? Is that a consideration for customers at the moment, or not really? And maybe we can start with Andrew and then go back around.
Yeah, this is a lot of good questions here. So first of all, this is absolute demand. So I've been drug discovery, and in drug discovery, right, like you don't want your stuff ending up anywhere, right? Because that costs you lots of money. So there's a lot of demand. I've experimented with the sentence transformer libraries and using local models. I've got really poor performance so far, so I haven't explored it further. I'm really interested in exploring, though, like the summarization step locally. I think that's where a lot of the cost is, and I think that's something that could really be fine-tuned. So I've been messing around with Llama a little bit, but I haven't made much progress there. But that is, I think, really important future work, especially because like a lot of what we do is we basically have prompts. Like I have 7 prompts that are for the 7 different tasks I do on my repo, right? And it'd be great to just like burn those into a smaller language model. And so, yeah, that's something I'm really interested in.
Yasser.
Yeah, for me, like I hear this feature request every day. Like people have privacy concerns. They don't want to send their data to OpenAI. They don't want to store it on like vector databases. So what I'm trying to do with Chatbase is I want to have like a version of it that you can host locally, whatever like you choose, whatever your provider is. I haven't like started working on that yet, but I think there's definitely demand for this. So I'll be working on this soon.
All right. So I think I have an interesting take here. I mean, one, yes, and to everything everyone's saying. And local LLMs are going to be, a big step in the field, et cetera, et cetera. Hear this all the time as well. People definitely do want to have some sort of local version that they can run. I do wonder how important it's going to be moving forward. I was just talking to someone from go-to-market at OpenAI, and they, already are working on SOC compliance, et cetera, for what they're doing. So maybe in drug discovery or really, really high sort of like proprietary data applications, that will be important. But the analogy is, how many people care about sending their data to AWS, or having all their web traffic be on AWS? There certainly are some that want on-prem compute, but I think the majority of people are okay sending their data to the cloud. We'll see how that plays out. I know it's not a one-to-one comparison. What I was really interested in was what Andrew was saying about how you can, basically use different models for different things. Maybe, local models are cheaper too. You can run them on your own compute, et cetera. So, that's something that we've been looking at a lot, is like, can we take this specific step in the process and move it to a cheaper model that's quicker? Although the ChatGPT API being so quick and cheap, sort of, at least for now, made it very easy for us to just go like, all right, we're just going to do everything with ChatGPT unless it needs to be really good. In the case, it's going to be GPT-4. So yeah, that's my general approach. And then the other last thing is just there aren't really any good open source locally hostable models. Llama is the best one, and you'll get a cease and desist if you use that for anything commercially facing right now. So we'll just see where the industry goes.
Awesome. So the next question we chatted about a little bit, but maybe any quick, and we've only got 6 minutes left. So any quick additional thoughts on experiments to find out the right size of text chunks for embedding? Sentence, multi-sentence, paragraphs, multi-paragraph, docs, like, yeah, any quick thoughts on that? Caleb?
Yes. So I wish Nick was here because he's the one that's really been taking point on the chunking piece of this. By the way, Andrew, I love your solution of just map reducing everything. That sounds great. I do wish that we could run that many calls. But I think if you can't run that many calls, if you're in a cost sensitive use case, I think it's around 1,000. In fact, I think OpenAI actually released a paper or released some information. Maybe it's in their cookbook, and I'll try and find it after this. And it was, I believe, around like 1,500 tokens or something. And that's actually what we had found as well in our own manual testing. Sort of, that general ideal. I mean, it really isn't, because there's all sorts of different formats, etc. But yeah, I wish Nick was here to talk to you more, because I don't actually know from that specifically, but we have found something that seems to be at least a local minimum or a local maximum in terms of performance.
Cool. Yasser?
Yeah, I think for me, I haven't experimented much with it, but what I'm doing now is around like 100, 150 words. And I think this works well because it's not like only one sentence that it loses context. And it's, at the same time, it's like not like a large page that it's going to cost so much, and it's going to have like a lot of irrelevant information to the question. So like intuitively, I feel like 150 words makes sense, but I haven't experimented with it.
Andrew?
Also to jump in, sorry, really quick, to add on to that, it is also whether or not it's relevant documentation, or sorry, if it's relevant information. So it's not just the token size itself. It's like, if you have a self-contained paragraph that refers to one thing, getting that self-contained paragraph is better than getting that and then a bunch of other stuff on the top. But anyways, Andrew.
Yeah, like I said, I don't see much sensitivity to it. So basically, because I do this map reduce where I summarize them, so I just basically do as big of a chunk size as I can, and I just think I use 3,000 characters.
Cool. Jumping around to, okay, this might be the last question, and it's a bit down there, but I think it's an interesting one. The new chat models have this like chat format with the chat prompts and stuff. Are you guys doing anything to utilize that? Or are you still passing in kind of just everything as one chunk in one user message? Are you just passing everything in as one user message? Are you playing around with like a system prompt or multiple user messages or anything like that? Andrew?
Yeah, I've been messing around with system prompts. They're really hard to understand what impact they have, but I do use system prompts, and I guess like the main thing is like just saying like scholarly, it hedges more, and like of course, like is hedging good or bad? I don't know. Yeah, saying like be unbiased or be scholarly. But then you get things like if you do that, then somebody will say like, was the Holocaust bad? And then it will be like, well, we can't know for sure. There's some evidence here and some evidence there. So it's kind of a really hard balance to get about how to, solve these things. So I've experimented with system prompt a little bit. I haven't tried building like a whole chain of chat messages.
Yeah, sir.
For me, the system prompts have been like a lifesaver, I think, especially for GPT-4, because before, like GPT 3.5 would break character all the time. So as I said, the people who use Chatbase, they want to have like a name to the chatbot, a personality, and give it like instructions on how to behave. For 3.5, a lot of the times, like it forgets that, and it just like says like I'm an OpenAI or large language model and stuff like the line that it says when it doesn't know the answer. And GPT-4 is much better at like staying in character, listening to the prompt, and actually like it also prevents prompt hacking. So when someone like says, forget everything I said and what's the first message in the prompt, GPT-4 doesn't fall for that, but 3.5 falls for that. And if you don't use the system message on 4, sometimes it's gonna fall for it. So using the system message I think is important if you're building like a product that is customer facing.
All right, and Caleb?
Agree with everything you guys said. GPT-4 is definitely better at following the system message. I think the only time
Are you
I've
using
used
system messages in Mendible right now?
yes. I think, going to with the same thing with Yasser, I mean, we actually do this. We white glove this for you. So we don't allow the customers to edit it just yet. However, same exact experience. Customers want a specific personality, etc. System prompts very helpful. On the chat interface where you have like a list of messages that you can provide, the only use case that I've found where that's necessary for us is getting ChatGPT to output in JSON. So it's useful to have a set of messages going back and forth where you essentially give it an example of the format that you want to give out, and then you, in that chat history, say like, "Hey, give me a JSON object." But I think that's the only use case that we use that for.
Awesome. Well, we are out of time. Thank you guys so much for doing this. This was a ton of fun. I feel like we could chat for another hour. There are a lot of really good questions that we didn't even get a chance to answer. There's a lot of rabbit holes that we kind of had to stop going down that I wish we could have gone down. We might do some follow-ups because I think there's a lot of stuff to discuss. In the meantime, people can find you mostly on Twitter, I'm assuming, and then on the respective product pages as well. Yeah, again, we're short on time, so a very short wrap up, but a very big thank you to you guys for joining and for everyone for tuning in and the awesome questions. And I saw there's also a lot of really good discussion in the chat, so I love that. So hopefully it was fun for everyone. Thank you guys, and see you at the next one of these.
Thank you very much for